Hello, everybody. It's Wednesday. Apologies, we are 3 minutes late, but we are here. And good to have you all here with us. I can see Camille is already with us. Good night, Camille. So it's a pleasure to be here. And today we will talk about one of the, I'm not saying one of the most important because everything is important, but one of the most beautiful episodes happened to Kardec, which is the trip from 1862 he did around France to visit some spirit centers to see the movement. This is a long journey. There is a book for this, and we will divide this in two episodes. So today we will have the first part. Next week we will have the second part. And I hope you like it. And um, Charles can help us because he was part of the research. See, he can he has a lot to contribute. And Rodrigo will be with us next week. So okay, I said too much. So good evening, Miss Gibbons. How are you, my dear?
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm very well, and I hope everyone is well as well. Beginning of spring today, the first day of spring for us, first day of autumn in the south. So, changes. We are the moment of change, and this is very important for ourselves, for our lives, for nature, and hopefully today. This the subject talking about Kardec's trip to Lyon is extremely important because of the relevancy that Sue has for us today. So, wishing everyone a very good evening and let's learn together today. And much peace. Boa tarde, boa noite a todos que estão nos assistindo. Hoje nós vamos falar sobre a viagem de Kardec, 1862, que é um tema extremamente importante para nós aprendermos, para a relevância que tem ainda nas nossas vidas. E esperamos que todos vamos aprender um pouco hoje. Que Deus nos abençoe.
Bonsoir, Charles.
Bonsoir Stevan, bonsoir, bonjour à tous. Merci beaucoup de nouveau d'être là avec nous ce soir pour parler de ce voyage qu'a fait Allan Kardec en 1862. Et j'espère que ça va vous plaire parce qu'on va apporter pas mal d'informations assez inédites, peu connues, et qui viennent de documents qu'on a trouvés récemment. Voilà. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Very happy to have you here with us again today to talk about this journey that Kardec made in 1862 to visit the Spiritist movements at that time with a lot of information we got about it in the booklet he made. But also we found quite some documents few years ago which are not really published yet and which contain much more details and much more information about this journey, and we will try to, at least today, start sharing some of them with you.
So this is so important. So thank you. Good night, Marco. Glad you are here. Camille saying it's very raining in the southeast of UK. So it's not news. It's raining in Ireland as well. So this is not news. Okay, let me show here our video. The video is just an introduction of the movement, the how the Spiritism came up, and but this is good introduction for everyone to understand what we will talk about today and next week. Let's go here.
In the United States and Europe, the phenomenon of table turning had become very popular, crowding concert halls with hundreds of spectators who wanted to see such freely flying objects up close. It was also common in private gatherings within family homes. Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail, a renowned French educator, initially did not pay attention to such events. Rivail considered them to be possible outcomes of some unconsciously generated physical phenomenon by the participants themselves, thus being irrelevant. But after hearing from a friend who considered himself a serious person that the objects answered questions, he became interested because he saw in this detail something worthy of research.
I will only believe when I see this for myself, and when I am proved that the table has brains to think and nerves to feel.
After attending several of these meetings and reviewing dozens of past meeting records, Rivail concluded that the deep and complex answers came from outside intelligences to those who served as mediums at such meetings. It was necessary further and deeper investigations.
That left no doubt. My ideas were far from accurate, but there was a fact that necessarily followed from a cause. I saw in those apparent futilities something serious, like the revelation of a new law, which I took to study in depth.
After testing and ruling out any possibility of fraud with the mediums he would use for his research, Rivail submitted to the spirits a series of questions aimed at elucidating problems concerning the philosophy, psychology, and nature of the invisible world.
First of all, I understood the seriousness of the exploration I was going to undertake. I realized in those phenomena the key to the obscure and controversial problem of the past and future of humanity. It was, in short, a whole revolution in ideas and beliefs. Therefore, it was necessary to work with the utmost circumspect and not lightly. Be positivist and not idealistic, so as not to deceive me.
Kardec formulated and tested several hypotheses in order to explain mediumistic phenomena, among them fraud, hallucinations, physical forces, somnambulism, unconscious clairvoyance, telepathy, and disembodied spirits. To reassure that the information obtained would be reliable, he used different mediums, distant and unknown to each other, for the crossing of the answers. The result of this extensive research was published in the Spirits Book, April 18, 1857. It contained the principles of the Spiritist teachings on the nature of spirits, their manifestations, and their relations with men, the moral laws, the present and future life, and the future of humanity, written under the dictation and published by order of superior spirits by Allan Kardec.
When questioned about its nature, this force has declared itself to belong to the world of spirit beings who have divested themselves of the human corporeal envelope. In this way, the doctrine of the spirits has been revealed.
Details of the scientific method used by Rivail and about the superior spirits who communicated the Spiritist teachings will be seen in our next studies. Do not forget to check the description of the video for more.
Okay. Good introduction. And I'd like to start with what were the main objectives of Allan Kardec during his journey around France in 1862. The main objectives of him was he in 1862, he already had published the Spirits book, and as you just saw in the video, he used to share letters with many other spirit centers, and of course, spirit centers from France. So his objective is to meet that people face to face, confirm the objectives of the Spiritism, checking the status of the development of the Spiritist movement at the region, see if people are serious, if they are, I would say, what's the word? If they were confident about what he's writing, especially in the Spiritist magazine. Also, he was aimed to answer questions, listen the concerns, because remember, it's a science. So he was looking for points in which he didn't think, or in which he needs to improve, or he needs to prove something. So that was the main objectives of the Kardec during his trip, to gather people, collect information, develop the Spiritism movement, and at the same time give a unification. Let's call it the spirits, the Spirit unification around France at that time. So I hope this was clear for you, and we can start the journey. And I like to start this journey with Charles, because all journey at this magnitude, like today we have problems. Can you imagine Kardec at that time, by traveling by horses, taking days to go from point A to point B? No, today we get a plane and go in hours in somewhere, but that day, no, that time, no. It's everything was more difficult to do these kind of journeys, and of course, Kardec faced a lot of challenge, and one of these challenges, Charles, was the towards the local authorities. And could you help us to understand what kind of difficulties he had towards the local authorities during his journey, and how he dealt with that?
Okay. So yes, indeed. So he started, as you have seen in the video, looking closer to this phenomenon in 1855, and published the first edition of the Spirits book in 1857. He made the second edition of the Spirits book, including the complementary observations he has made and the feedback he received worldwide from the spreading of the Spirits book. Second edition of the Spirits book, that is the actual one with 1019 questions and answers, was published in 1860. And the year after, 1861, he published the first edition of the Mediums book. And the second edition of the Mediums book was published also with some complements just before he traveled in September 1862. So that is the status. So he did not yet publish neither the Gospel, nor the Heaven and Hell, nor the Genesis. And he had already, since January 1858, published every month the Spiritist magazine, Revue Spirit. That was also distributed everywhere in France and used as a platform for exchanges, testing some ideas, and so on. So that is the period 1862 it's a situation in 1862 when he started to do this travel. But it was not the first travel he made. He made the first travel in 1860. He went to Lyon because there were the first persons interested in spiritism that he had contact with. And Kardec was born in Lyon and lived in Bourg-en-Bresse, close to Lyon, and so on, Rivail. So that's why he selected to go there. And he made a second travel in 1861, the year after, where he made from Paris to Lyon back and forth. And then in October, from Paris to Bordeaux back and forth. So this travel in 1862 was already the third travel he made. So during the first travel, he had no particular issues with the authorities because Spiritism was not yet known so much and so on. Albeit in Lyon in 1861, there was a general gathering where participated something like 150 persons. So it was already some significant gathering. But he did not face particular problem with the authorities because the authorities at that time, when I talk here about authorities, are of course from the government, but also the religious authorities, the bishops, and so on, did not yet perceive, let's say, the importance that the Spiritist teaching and the Spiritist movement would gain in so quickly, in so few years. So 1861, it was quiet. He did not face a particular problem. And one of the reasons also why, also in Paris, he did not face problem is that, and this is also not very well known, in 1856 or 1857, there was a visit of the medium Daniel Douglas home in France, and he made a séance where there were some phenomenon of levitation and what's the name of Symphone in English? Silvia?
Accordion.
Accordion in French, sorry for that. An accordion playing alone in the air and all this well-known phenomenon produced by Daniel Douglas home. And one of these sessions happened in the Palais des Tuileries, with the presence of the Imperator, Napoleon III, and also the Imperatrice, which his wife, Josephine, and because they were interested in this phenomenon. And Kardec has been invited also in this session. So there was a kind of a link that Kardec stayed always very discreet about that, between the French Emperor, Napoleon III, and Kardec, which was somehow the leader of the Spiritist movement. And that's why in Paris, they got easily authorization for opening a society, for having regular gatherings, for publishing also the books. And because the emperor was, how to say, positive about the Spiritist phenomenon and what Kardec was doing. And his position was always, let them do. He did never tell it publicly, of course, for political or whatever other reasons, because he had also to keep the relationship with other religious people who had quite some influence still at that time, and so on and so on. You know, these political things. So in Paris, he did never have a problem. But in 1862, when he arrived in Lyon, he arrived, I would say, maybe Saturday or Sunday. And the general gathering was for Wednesday, the Wednesday after his arrival. And so he started by visiting some of the groups, and they were preparing for this big gathering. And just for information, to this gathering participated more than 600 people, so much more than the year before. And of course, at that time, it was necessary to get an authorization from the local authorities in order to have the gathering happening. Okay. And the day before, I mean the Tuesdays, they still did not get this authorization. It was going back and forth, and one guy saying, no, the decision has to be taken by the other guy, which who is currently traveling. He will come back only on Friday, so it means after the date of the meeting. So it was a clear mess. Nobody wanted to commit on behalf of the other, and they just pushed the people from one office to the other without getting the authorization. Some people were, oh, if it would be by me, I would give the authorization, but I cannot, always giving this type of excuses. And Kardec was in parallel, of course, visiting the groups, and each time they had a mediumistic session, he asked the question to the spirits, hey, look, we have a difficulty. What do you think about? What should we do? What should we not do? And in these original documents, we found a booklet that Kardec was, the notebook, where Kardec was taking the notes of what happened during these sessions, of also all the exchanges with the authorities, and giving full details. It's very interesting. I think it would be too long here to go in the full details. But basically, he asked to the spirits, what shall I do? And the spirits were very clear. They told, okay, but this guy you are talking with is not a good guy. This guy will not help you. You should rather go to that other guy from the Senate locally, because that other guy is really sincerely favorable to you. And that other guy is afraid to give the decision because he thinks that his boss will use the fact he takes this decision to fire him, And the spirits were giving a lot of information like that about the real situation and to whom they should speak and not to speak. It's really, how to say, we could write a book about this. So interesting it is. And then they talk also about the bishop. And the bishop, of course, was strongly making strong pressures not to get the authorization. And that was the biggest hurdle. And another hurdle was there was an old general from the Napoleon I army, le Maréchal Castellan, his name. He was also in Lyon, quite old and still influencing, also friend with the bishop, acting against in order to try to avoid that they get the authorization to gather. Okay, and the spirits also gave advices about who should go and meet all those guys, and they asked Kardec, you should not go. Please let the local guys, and giving the names, go on your behalf, because this will facilitate the process of getting the authorization. And then all of a sudden, that same day, this famous Maréchal Castellan suddenly died. And Kardec asked again, hey, to the spirits, what happened? Why did this Maréchal die suddenly and right now, the day before the big gathering? And the spirits, they answered him, look, in order to help you, we anticipated by a couple of days his return to the spiritual world. So it's absolutely incredible what happened and all what has been done, this collaboration between the spiritual world in order to have God's will being done, in a certain way. And God's will was to have cessation being done. So that's another part of what happened. And the next day, then, the guy who was appointed to go there spent the whole day into these offices. And they told, no, we don't find anymore your request for authorization, giving excuses. And then, all of a sudden, no, we found it again. But still, we cannot give an answer and so on. And all of a sudden, they came back and told, okay, here is the authorization. You can go and do your meeting. But you need to invite this guy and that guy from the police, chief of police and whatever. 3 guys, they had to be present there. And that was, of course, absolutely welcome to have those guys participating. And then he asked, what happened in fact? What happened is that they sent a wire, because that was the very first moment of the telegraphy. They sent a wire in Paris, and in Paris they got the answer, do like we do here, let them do. And that was then enough for the guy from the Senate take the responsibility to sign the authorization, and the other guy, and so on. And of course, the bishop was not happy, and the Marshal Castellan did return the day before to the spiritual world. So finally, they got the authorization in the afternoon of the same day that in the evening they had the gathering. So it's quite interesting story that we discovered in all these documents, and everything handwritten by Kardec himself. Okay. So that's just a small part of it. So I made it very summarized. But interestingly is that this help from the spiritual world happened also during the session itself. Because Kardec was there with the guys from Lyon and so on. He prepared his speech. He had the papers with the different sheet of the speech in hands. And the guy from the police came a little bit late. And so the room was already quite full. And there was a side access door, which was unfortunately closed. And the spirits, they told, we made such that this door was closed. And what happened? The guy from the police had to go over over the seats in order to reach in front, so everybody could see him arriving. Yes, please, your place is here, just beside our desk, and so on. So everybody in the room saw that the chief of the police was entering and was sitting there in front of the room. Because what happened is that some guys were preparing to mess the meeting, to how to say this in English, apitar. Sorry, Silvia.
To hack? No, it's okay. They were hackers. They were going to hack the meeting, make a noise.
Yes.
And, yeah.
They also put a kind
disrupted the meeting.
Of a mask that was suspended that should fall down at a given point in time, and then one should make some noise of a galinha.
Hens.
Of a hen. And they prepared
Chicken.
a lot of things to mess up the meeting. But unfortunately, this stuff which was pinderated would fall just in front of the guys of the chief from the police. So they couldn't do it. So it's absolutely incredible all what happened. And also Kardec was reading his speech, and the spirits inspired Kardec to put an additional sheet with question after the sheet of the presentation. So when he finished the presentation, there was still one sheet in his hand. So the people in the room were thinking he did not finish his speech yet, because if they would have started appreciating the other guy were also prepared to mess the thing, and the journalist was prepared to tell the own guy spiritists were disapproving Kardec and so on. I mean, they organized a lot of stuff that at the end did not work as they wanted because of these circumstances that were arranged in order to overcome this difficulty. And at the end, Kardec also was, when he prepared the speech, he prepared it also giving a clear message to the authorities, saying that Spiritism is encouraging peace, is encouraging, pacific attitudes, is also helping a lot for the peace in the society, that the boss are treating good all the employees, that the employees also have a good conscience of the work they are doing, showing clearly that the root of the Spiritist teaching is for social peace, going in the way that the authorities liked. And the guys from the police, they came later on, just to tell Kardec, it's really very good what you told. Now we know better who you are and what you are doing. And one of the policemen, including one of the three, was then a member of a spiritist groups in Lyon. So
Wow.
this is just to illustrate what happened. Now, just maybe sorry, I'm talking a little bit too much. But another small
No,
episode which is quite
fascinating.
interesting is that the year after 1863, it was foreseen that Kardec would go back again to Lyon and make another travel. But again, by chance, this famous oriented chance, let's say so, he was not healthy, good in health. He had some problem of breathing. He got really very tired very quickly because of heart not working properly. And he had to cancel his travel at the last moment. And instead of going to Lyon and making a second tour, he was to Saint-Adresse, which is close to the North Sea, Canal de la Manche, in order to get a little bit fresh air from the ocean and things like that, and enabling him to recover the health. And on the same time, he was alone in a small house that he rented on the beach. And there he was very calm, no problem, nobody bothering him, having the inspiration to write the gospel according to Spiritism. And now what? Guess what? In Lyon, they came back, the bishop going to higher authorities and so on. They planned to catch Kardec and even to imprison him. So he escaped also from that one, thanks to the help of the spirits, which, as we said already to you, are influencing much more in our daily lives than what we think. And here we have an incredible example of all what they are able to do in order to reach the goals, their goals, in fact. One may think to call one guy a couple of days earlier to the spiritual world is maybe going against his free will. No, I think we cannot think like that, because certainly this Marechal Castellan, during his sleep, he discussed with the good spirits and said, look, you are just about to do a mess, something which is not good for you. So he probably agreed of going back a couple of days earlier, and that is in fact what happened. So this is just, how to say, a small part, a small introduction of this. But again, I think what was really key is Napoleon I was open to the Spiritist teachings, and Kardec,
Napoleon III.
sorry,
Napoleon
the third,
III.
yes, open to Spiritism, and this is why Kardec could develop all these missions, Spiritist magazine, all the meetings, gathering of the Spiritist Society in Paris, as per the wish of the spirits, basically. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Wow, this is wonderful. I could spend here my entire night listening you talking about these stories. Just to answer the question here from Marco. Marco, you are right. Kardec born in Lyon. He was living in Paris, but these episodes Charlie just told us is when he went to Lyon to visit a spirit center there.
Yes.
So
What
there is a story in Lyon as well. Is okay?
Kardec is born in Lyon, but he never lived in Lyon. He was just born there, and then he lived in another city close to Lyon, which was Bourg-en-Bresse, before going to Yverdon and then later on to Paris. So he never lived in Lyon. But he had, his father was from Lyon, his aunt was also from Lyon. So he had quite some contacts in the city of Lyon, and also some friends from the family. On top of the Spiritists, of course, because Lyon was really the first city where the Spiritists developed a lot. And one of the key reasons for this is Lyon there was a lot of manufacture of, comment se dit seda, Silvia, in English?
Silk.
Of silk. lot of silk in Lyon. So a lot of very poor people, hard workers, and so on. And this is one of the key factors why the Spiritist was so strongly accepted in Lyon, because all these poor people, they saw this consoling aspect of Spiritism, giving the vision of the future, immortality of the soul, and so on. So the Spiritism has really been accepted through his moral consequences in Lyon, thanks to this characteristic.
It's such a lot of rubbish.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I think it's fascinating to listen to the story, the things, because I suppose even the difficulty in getting the permission to have, to have the meeting was the best thing that could happen. Sometimes we think, it was difficult because they're fighting against the spirits. No, because that difficulty allowed that the police and all those people being there at the meeting, and the reckless that would go there and disturb the meeting were not allowed to do because the police was there. So even the difficulty was the thing that had to happen. And I think, even the person as well who died, I think it's very important as well to think in terms of, because sometimes what he was going to do in trying to hold back the meeting would be detrimental for his spirit. So
Exactly.
going, a few days earlier, he made a mistake that could have cost him in the spiritual world quite a lot of pain and suffering, and doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it seems to be bad, but it's the best thing that can happen for the spirit. And we have to understand this, that the spirits know better. But also, I think one of the points about Lyon that is important is because it was in early Christianity, at the time of Gallia and everything, it was a very big center of Christianity in Lyon, and there were a lot of sacrifices. A lot of Christians were killed there, in the arena and everything. When Lyon was founded by the Romans, and the Romans were, at the time of the Romans, they sacrificed a lot of Christian there in the arena. So it was a focus for Spiritism. And I don't think it was a coincidence that Kardec actually was born there. There was quite a lot of links with early Christianity there. I think that's an important point to remember. And I think,
And Silvia,
we needed to...
on top of that, all these first Christians who were burned and so on in the first centuries in Lyon were somehow the mentors of the Spiritist movement in that city.
Exactly, yes. I mean, it's Lyon is an extremely important point, isn't it? That Kardec was born there, and, the spirits had been working there for centuries, because we know as well that I think back in 1963 or 64, I can't remember exactly the date, but there was a terrible fire in Rio de Janeiro. In a circus, that many, over 100 people were killed in the circus. They were burned, they probably know. And later on, someone went to talk to Chico Xavier about that. And he said that the people who had died there were the people who had sent the early Christians into being burned in that arena in the early times in Lyon. And they had asked to have to go to the same experience of what they had done to the people there. So there's so many connections. It's so important. I think we must, when we talk about Spiritism, and especially with Kardec, we need to open our minds to possibilities that our little minds cannot conceive. And I think the spirits, you need to open up to be able to sit and learn. I think it's very important, because I find that the more we learn about Spiritism, the less we know, because every time we learn something, that there's so much more to learn. So I think, we need to just read and sit and learn. learn. Sorry, I just had to say something there.
Yes,
You,
and by the way, Silvia, I think we can talk about this romance from Emmanuel, which is Ave Christ. I don't know if it exists in English.
I don't
It,
think it has been translated.
I
No, it's
don't
Ave
think
it,
so.
Cristo.
No.
it is talking exactly about this episode of the first Christians
Exactly. Yes.
in Lyon. And so it's
Exactly.
a lot of
Yes.
things
Yes.
linked here. You are right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's why, by the way, why the city of Niterói, where was this circus close to Rio de Janeiro,
Yes.
had made an agreement with the city of Lyon. And in 2005, they agreed to build, to erect a monument commemorating the 200 years of the birth of Kardec. And the monument is still there in Lyon, placed more or less at the place, Rue Sala, where was this bath houses where Kardec, where the young Rivail was born.
Born. Exactly. I mean, the spiritual connections with the owner is very, very important. And I think, Marco should pay attention because there's lots to learn there. And this, and also, I mean, it was very, all those things that happened in Lyon and also in Rome was something that changed quite a lot of the policies of the Romans, the emperors and the situation there. When you read Tacitus or Suetonius, the annals and everything, you see that how all this indiscriminate killing of Christians made a big difference for the people of Rome, and anyway, that's the story for another day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Marco is right. I mean, in Lyon, it was also very hot during the revolution. And for instance, the father-in-law of Kardec, has been through guillotine in Lyon in 1794. And then there is a lot of things to say in Lyon, the revolution and all what the father and the mother of Kardec suffered during this period before his birth. He came a little bit later, 1804, when the things were a little bit cooled down. And it was the same year where Napoleon I made himself emperor in December of the same year, 1804.
But there was also the beginning of the Napoleonic Wars that took 20 years to end. So
Yes.
it was a lot of problems and difficulties. And I think owing this, the ideas that, Kardec was brought up in and going to Switzerland and being exposed to so many different cultures and much learning and away from quite a lot of, the influence and everything was so important. I think his coming was planned for many centuries. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just for the small story, another point you just came in my mind. When the Marshal Castellan died, Kardec asked to the spirits, "Why did you call the Marshal and not the bishop himself?" And their answer
It
was
wasn't
very, very
relevant.
clear. Their answer was very clear. See, you call a bishop, you have 10 others which will come after him. But the Marshal like Castellan, you have only one.
Yes, exactly.
Giving also
But,
the clear explanation that to
yes,
call back the bishop would not have helped so much as calling back the Marshal Castellan.
yeah.
An
But
incredible story. Oh, ouais.
so it's interesting because also I think if you think in terms of maybe the general, whatever he did, he deserved not to be suffering as much, and the bishop needed to stay on earth longer. I think Marcus says something here. There was no science. I think this is incorrect because France is one of the greatest places for science, the greatest philosopher and
At that
mathematicians.
time was the biggest one.
Exactly. I mean, to say that France didn't have science is incorrect, I'm afraid. Yes. Sorry, Stevan.
No, yeah, we don't have protocol today because the protocol here is listening stories. But my dear, Dear Ms. Gibbons, what were the difficult, the obstacles, let's say, for growing the disseminated the spiritism in Kardec faced?
Well, I think like everything new, and I think the where my computer. Sorry. Oh,
Yes, we can hear you.
hello.
Yeah, you're back.
Oh, sorry. Everything froze for me. No, I think because the ideas of Spiritism were so new, so revolutionary, that people didn't quite understand. And I think one of the basic things, in my opinion, for what I read and everything, and is the question of would challenge the church, the authority of the church, the control of people, for threaten people with eternal hell, eternal punishment, and the church would get a lot of money from people, in fear. They had, if you pay so much money to pay so many prayers for me, so many masses. I think basically one of the basic threats, I think, was that would challenge the authority of the established church, because the idea was you don't need any intermediary between you and God. You can talk to God directly. There is no eternal punishment. God is merciful. God is a father. And I think to, in a way, revive the teachings of the gospel and the way Jesus had taught, which at the time of his teachings, he challenged the Pharisees and the way they taught. And I think Spiritism, being the third revelation, was the same thing, came again to challenge the authority of the church and the power, because it was a sort of connection directly between man and God himself. You don't need any intermediaries, any power in between. And I think that was one of the basic problems. I don't know if maybe what Charles think of that.
Yes, I mean, all the new ideas face strong opposition at the beginning. I think we can make this as a kind of a general statement. And the Spiritist body of knowledge, as you told, for the reasons you told, did clearly also face the same type of opposition. But that's not all, I would say. There is also, how to say, the step of coming from the materialistic ideas to the spiritualistic ideas. And this is a step which is really personally sometimes not easy to do for some individuals. And it can take time, it can take lives in order to make this step. Because it's really a deep conceptual change, and there are of course what we call these conceptual blockages, blocking, that are refraining us from really changing the concept and going to another concept, and then of course discover all what's behind and all the logic, looking that this is really widening tremendously our vision, and also discovering that we have a soul, all the power of this soul, and so on. That's one thing. The other thing is also, Kardec is telling it very clearly also during his travel, is you have several categories of spiritists. You have the first one, which,
Yes.
a lot of phenomena. I would like to see the phenomenon and the moving tables and this and that, but they just stay at this. They don't try to understand why, how, and so on. It's just a question of curiosity. Then you have the people who, okay, right, and then they study a little bit. They see, oh, it's very nice, but yet they have the blockage. They do not do it to not put it in practice on themselves.
They want
So
to
this is
change on others, don't they?
they
Yeah,
want to change the other.
The war is for
Nobody
the
can
others,
change
not
the
for
other.
themselves. Yeah.
One can change only oneself. No, nobody can change anyone other. And we can influence, advise, and so on, but only the person itself can change. That's also fundamental. And then you have the third category, which is then reducing quite a lot the percentage of the population, are the people who have seen, have understood, and that are really putting daily in practice. And within the Spiritist movement, you have a lot of people who understood, but they are bound into the material interest, into their money, the privilege they have, or whatever else. Like this parable of Jesus of the guy who was rich, and okay, Jesus, I believe in you. What shall I do? Okay, sell everything you have, give the money out, and follow me. And then this I cannot do, showing clearly that he was more attached to his material stuff than really motivated to follow Jesus. So it's a kind of the same type of situation. Of course, Spiritism is not asking anyone to get rid of his belongings and things like that. Not at all.
No.
It's just
But
then.
I think sorry.
Yes,
Go.
go on.
No. I think the point of this parable of Jesus, I think one of the things that's very interesting is that he says, love God and love your neighbors yourself. And I said, oh, I do that. And then he says, oh, fulfill what the commandment says. And he said, oh, yes. So I think one of the things for me is interesting on that is that he was a good man. He fulfilled all the law, as he saw it. And but he just couldn't get rid of his money. He was in that step. If he gives to the poor and come and follow me, but he wasn't prepared. But in a way, he was a good person. And I think that's one of the changes of mind, I think, because I think, Charles, the change from the materialist point of view to a spiritist point of view is a huge leap. But some of those people, they did believe in the soul. They did believe in that their life would continue. I think what was difficult for them, and it's not something we still have this now, is the question that Spiritism frees you from everything. When Spiritism says you are responsible for yourself, God will not send you into eternal hell. There is no punishment that God dishes out. You are responsible. It always impresses me when André Luiz, in his Nosso Lar, the Astral City, he says, when you die, when you leave your physical body behind and you go into the spiritual world, you look into the mirror of your own conscience. And that's how, and actually he says, sometimes I wished there was hell, because then the responsible would be somebody else, not me. And I think that is a big paradigm of change, because you are responsible. God does not punish you. We ourselves ask for the difficulties and the lessons to learn, because we don't see as karma or as punishment, but lessons that we need to learn. And this is a big thing, because you can't blame anybody else but yourself for kind of life you have, or kind of life you're going to have. And this takes, I think, maturity of spirit. And that's what Spiritism offers, although it gives hope and understanding and relief to a lot of people, because it's just incredibly beautiful. The philosophy of Spiritism is just incredibly beautiful and hopeful, and really gives you peace, I find.
And at the end, you have some persons which have the maturity to accept and go that way firmly,
Yes.
by practicing on themselves. And you have the others who are still hesitating. They are not, how to say, having the power of will sufficient to go that route. And of course, that is exactly what talking about the obstacles of the growing of Spiritism. You have such type of people inside the Spiritist movements,
Oh,
and the
Oh
yes.
biggest
yes.
obstacles sometimes are within the Spiritist movements.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
have
yes.
people who,
Probably more.
voilà, lack of disinterestedness, bound and introducing personal ideas and having preconceived ideas also against some of the points, and really giving a bad example of what Spiritism is,
Exactly.
and what in fact what Spiritism is not.
Yeah.
So those are amongst, there are of course
Yeah.
others, the
I,
biggest
I wrote
obstacle for growing.
I wrote something from the Kardec speech, when he says, he goes on, and we talk about that. Without charity, he says about Spiritism, that without charity there is no salvation. Without charity, they are not true Spiritists. And the banner of Spiritism is, the banner, he says, the aim of Spiritism is to be charitable, and is charity is the duty that it imposes on us, uh, to really learn moral and our inner transformation. And I think it says in the gospel, that I think is something, that what identifies a true spirit is the effort he makes to be a better person.
Exactly.
And this, is something that we are learning. We have difficulties with, but we're learning. And once we know, you can't say you don't know anymore. I find Emmanuel has this, one of the things he says, if you really are studying Spiritism, trying learning it, and you are not prepared to make the change, you better leave it. Better go and do something else, because you will not be able to say you don't know it. You can't claim
Yes.
ignorance for
You don't have
something.
this excuse.
Yes.
You don't have this excuse.
Yeah. So,
Okay, my friends,
yeah.
it's our time is up. Wonderful, nice conversation. Is wonderful to hear all these stories. I I can't
I
wait
was
to,
riveted, actually. Really
yeah,
interesting.
to go to visit Charles and have a tea and sit beside his desk and okay, let's learn
Chat.
about Kardec. Yeah. Okay. Let me let me put it here, the announcements. So next week it is part 2 of this journey here. Hopefully Rodrigo will be with us. Um, Again, if you guys like to study the spiritism psychology, our friend Fabrício Assunção, he coordinates a group who has this kind of studies. Please contact him. He is from the Spiritist Society of Bournemouth in UK, in the south of UK, and he will give you more details. Um, Not this Sunday, but the following Sunday, we will have our friend Flavio Zanetti talking about Gabriel Delan, Spiritists phenomenon. So it's important to talk about this genius, Gabriel Delan, as well. In April, we are approaching the World Spiritist Month. Um, the agenda is being prepared. Once I have the agenda, I will share with you guys. This is just a heads up call. Okay, this is gone already. Okay, here. Uh, every Saturday, 10:30 a.m. UK time, Charles Munir and Guilherme Diaz, they hold a course on Medium's book. So if you want to join, here are the Zoom room details. Also, every Monday at 8 p.m. UK time, our friend Ebony Paris, she conduct a study of the book Astral City, No Solar. And every other week, we do have conversations on mediumship with Rafael Caldas and Faye Waddington. And this is it for us today. Thank you for all the comments. There's a lot of comments here. Okay, poor Camille, he'll be in Malaga. He'll be in Malaga. Oh my gosh.
He'll try to be there with us, though.
Yeah, I don't blame you, Camille.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you, Marco, for your contributions here. We know you are very knowledgeable about the history here, and we want to emphasize that next week we go to the part number 2 of this journey here. So that's it. Thank you very much. Merci, Charles. Sylvia,
Merci.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'll see you next Wednesday. Thank you. Bye-bye.
God willing.
Bye-bye.
Yes, bye. God bless. Bye.